Welcome to the deep dive. So, when you pay your taxes, you expect certain things, right?
Right.
You expect administrative agencies, say the Department of Health or Children and Families in Florida, to do their job, to license, to regulate, and, to investigate when something goes wrong.
The basic idea is that accountability is the state's responsibility. It
Oh.
should be, well, straightforward
It should be. But today's deep dive is a forensic look at what happens when that system doesn't just fail, but seems almost designed to wear you down.
an ordeal.
Exactly, an ordeal. Our source material today is just this incredible collection of records and notes compiled by a man named Alex Ander. It covers the 2 years after his mother died in May of 2020. And this isn't really a story about simple negligence. It's about something else.
It's about administrative gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And the lesson we're extracting for you here is, I think, really crucial. This isn't just one person's bad experience. It's a roadmap. It shows how a system that requires, extraordinary persistence, technical competence, and emotional endurance just to get the facts straight.
It stops being about public protection.
It stops completely. It becomes a mechanism of attrition. It's designed to make you give up.
That word attrition, that's the key. The idea that delay and complexity aren't bugs, they're features.
Mm-hmm.
So let's set the scene. Alex's mother, she died after a fall in a hospital, Winter Haven Hospital, and the cause seems alarmingly clear. A nurse didn't follow a critical safety policy for fall prevention bed alarms.
And we know from the records that another employee had specifically told this nurse the alarm was off, disabled, and still, nothing was done before the fall.
So this is all happening in a regulated environment, which is why Alex went straight to the state. He went to the Department of Children and Families, or DCF.
The agency that's supposed to investigate abuse and neglect of vulnerable adults.
That's the one. And Alex went to them with just detailed, immediate documentation. I mean, to give you an idea of how involved they were from the start, the investigator, a Mrs. Chaka McDaniels, took his verbal statement just 4 hours before his mother's official time of death.
So they were on the scene, so to speak, right from the beginning.
Exactly.
But the real work, that was all on Alex. Within just a few weeks of his mother's death, he was basically acting as his own PI. He put together this whole chronological summary, medical records, doctor's notes, hospice papers, even photos of the injuries.
And his goal wasn't just to complain, it was to prove, with facts, how that one single fall started a direct chain reaction of injuries that led to her death.
A direct cascade.
Yeah. And DCF, they acknowledged they got this huge package of documents. They even said, reassuringly, that a registered nurse specialist would review everything.
Which gives the impression of a clinically grounded and thorough investigation. That's what you'd expect.
It is. But here's where the timeline gets really important. Alex didn't just sit back and wait. As more hospital records came in, he just dove into them. And we're talking about 6 weeks of spending up to 16 hours a day on this.
Wow. Just think about that. The sheer scale of that uncompensated labor. Most people, especially when they're grieving, they just don't have the time or, frankly, the technical skill to do a forensic accounting of medical records like that.
But Alex did. And because he did, he found these huge inconsistencies. Things a trained reviewer should have caught immediately.
Absolutely.
Let's unpack a few of those. First, the hospital's own incident report had conflicting descriptions of the fall. Second, the paperwork for the required fall prevention measures. It was incomplete.
And that's critical because
Yeah.
she was classified as a high fall risk.
A high fall risk. And he also found timing discrepancies and even admissions from staff that they knew about the risks, specifically the disabled alarm, beforehand.
They knew.
And maybe the most critical medical detail he caught, the one that connects the fall to the death, was the continued use of anticoagulation therapy after the fall.
Blood thinners.
Yeah.
For someone with a major trauma, that's just incredibly dangerous. You're basically guaranteeing internal bleeding.
Exactly. It's the smoking gun linking the fall to the internal bleeding that contributed to her death.
So he's got this structured, sophisticated analysis all tied directly to the hospital's own records. This isn't just an emotional plea.
Not at all.
So what did DCF do with all this evidence he submitted in July 2020?
Well, they gave him no substantive response at all. Nothing. Instead, the investigator just told him that because his mother had died, the investigation would, and I'm quoting here, probably take a year to complete.
There it is. The attrition model kicks in. The death, which should be a trigger for an urgent review,
Right.
is instead used as the excuse for a massive delay. The immediate risk is gone, so the urgency is gone. And that just makes accountability so much harder.
So Alex checks in around the 6-month mark, and he's told the investigation's already been closed. Go online to find the report. That's it.
A closed file,
Yeah.
with no discussion of his 6 weeks of analysis. Unbelievable. And then, just trying to get that final report became this whole other bureaucratic nightmare.
Oh, yeah. He had all the right documents, notarized proof, executor status, but DCF still needed multiple rounds of legal review and kept asking for more ID. It was like they didn't even know their own process.
It's the system actively blocking access to its own work product.
And when he finally gets the summary, Alex sees it's materially incomplete. It just fails to address the key medical facts he'd already handed them on a silver platter.
Which leads him to this procedural trap. It's now the 1-year anniversary of his mother's death. He formally asks the investigator, Ms. McDaniels, how do I appeal this? How do I reopen the case with the evidence you already have?
And her answer was just brutal. She told him there was no appeal process.
None.
And an investigation could not be reopened once it was closed. Period.
Can you imagine? The system gets the facts wrong and then tells the person who has the right facts that there's no way to correct the record.
It's a dead end, a procedural dead end.
It creates this illusion of finality. Case closed. Facts are settled, even if they're wrong.
So Alex has two choices. Give up or escalate. He escalated. He basically had to go rogue, spending over a month navigating phone trees just trying to find a supervisor's name. He eventually reaches a Mr. Roy Carr, who's the state director of Adult Protective Services.
And this is the proof that the standard process was broken. It was only after Alex told Mr. Carr directly that DCF had either failed to collect or just flat-out disregarded critical evidence that communication started again.
It took executive intervention to get any movement at all.
Exactly. But even then, the system's gatekeeping was still in full effect. Mr. Carr says he'll review the new evidence. But when Alex tries to resubmit his analysis through the official online portal,
The system just rejects it.
it rejects it. And get this, the reason given was that the concerns did not constitute reasonable cause to suspect harm.
The ultimate harm already happened. She died.
The irony is just staggering. The digital gatekeeper says there's no cause for concern in a death investigation.
So Alex had to literally mail a physical package of the evidence to Mr. Carr's desk just to bypass the state's own intake system.
Let's bring this back to that core flaw we talked about, the outsourced labor. The only reason this case was ever reviewed properly was because of the unpaid, uncompensated labor of a private citizen over a span of 2 years.
DCF's entire fact-finding job was basically pushed onto the victim's family. He had to do the investigation, find the agency's mistakes, and then fight them for the right to submit his corrections.
And it required persistent escalation to senior leadership just to get the agency to fix its own record. A system that works like that isn't an oversight mechanism.
No, it's an obstruction mechanism.
Exactly. The citizen pays the price of persistence.
So after 2 long years, Alex has finally forced the state to admit the first investigation was deficient. He asks Mr. Carr the obvious question, what happens next?
And the answer reveals this jurisdictional dead end that most families would never even see coming.
Right. Because DCF, the agency that investigates the neglect, they have, quote, no authority to act on the nurse's professional license, no ability to impose professional consequences, and no enforcement power beyond fixing its own file.
Their job is protective services. They're there to ensure the safety of a vulnerable adult who is, currently at risk.
But the Department of Health, the DOH, that's the agency that handles licensing and discipline for the nurse.
2 different silos. So DCF could agree that neglect happened, but then the case had to be referred to a whole other agency, DOH, for any real consequences.
And that referral, that wasn't a resolution. It was the start of a second administrative ordeal that took another year.
There was no seamless handoff, no integrated pathway.
None. Alex had to become the interagency courier.
Yeah.
He was the one who had to navigate the new bureaucracy, supply the corrected documents, and basically connect the dots for the state.
And that's the structural fragmentation in a nutshell. Lawmakers create these silos, DCF for protection, DOH for licensing. But what it guarantees in practice is that any real accountability depends on grieving families acting as investigators and couriers.
And most people would just give up. The case would disappear in the cracks between agencies.
Right.
Now, let's look at the underlying logic here, because this is where you see the quiet justification for this kind of failure.
Yes, the posture of the investigation itself is, it's fascinating and it's chilling. The core logic seems to be that once Ms. Ender had died, she was no longer subject to ongoing risk.
And since the agency's main purpose is preventing future harm,
the incentive to pour resources into investigating past harm just evaporates.
So the death itself basically moots the question of maltreatment. It lets the system close the case using this perverse logic that, hey, there is no risk because the victim is deceased.
So accountability is avoided, not because they found no harm occurred, but through procedural attrition and silence. It's a structural defense mechanism. The system is designed to move on from a completed fatality because its focus is on preventing the next one, not assigning responsibility for the last one.
So to recap this whole deep dive, accountability for preventable death only happened because of Alexander's sustained 2-year effort. He did the work the state agencies are funded to do.
He didn't fail to cooperate. The system failed to operate. And the key takeaway for you, the listener, is this. When the barrier to justice is that high, the system is fundamentally broken.
It raises a big question.
It does. If the system's default is to close the file because the victim is deceased, what real self-correction is happening to prevent the exact same error, the missed alarm, the bad protocol, from harming the next vulnerable adult?
Something for you to mull over. The problem here is fragmentation and the incentive to just close a file. What kind of structural change, maybe technological, could force a truly seamless handoff between these agencies? A shared platform, maybe? Or a joint investigative unit that prevents the system from using a person's death as a defense against a thorough investigation.
Think about the political will it would take to actually enforce that kind of integrated accountability.
We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.